In a world teetering on the edge of chaos, where every corner seemed to pulse with the cries of despair, stood our protagonist, a figure revered like a god by countless worshippers. His presence commanded awe, not through pomp or glory, but through a connection to something far greater. Beside him, a beast of unimaginable size loomed, its shadow casting the land into darkness, blotting out the sun itself. Yet, despite its monstrous form, there was a gentle spirit within, a bond so profound that it felt as though the beast and the man were one and the same. And indeed they were. The beast was him, and he was the beast, two forms of the same existence, united in purpose. When the world was overrun by invading monsters, chaos devouring all in its path, it was he, man and beast together, who rose to save it. With every step, the earth trembled. With every roar, the heavens shook. And with every battle, hope was rekindled. So, our story is start like this. On June 2nd, 2224, the city of Zhuining was plunged into chaos. A colossal snake, over 100 meters long, had attacked the city. News reports described the snake as an enigma, a creature whose species remained unidentified. To make matters stranger, several citizens captured footage of a massive whale-like beast appearing in the sky north of the city, sending waves of shock and commotion through the populace. In a quiet apartment, a figure lay crumpled on the floor. Blood seeped from his wrists, staining the ground beneath him. Chen Chu, a sophomore at the University of Ning, stared at his lifeless body from a detached perspective. Confusion overtook him. Was that truly him? How could he be seeing this? His shock only deepened when he turned toward the mirror. His reflection wasn't human. It was that of an iguana. Panic set in as Chen Chu struggled to process the impossible. Was he dreaming, hallucinating, or somehow transformed into this reptile? He thought back to recent events, trying to make sense of the situation. Chen Chu was someone who valued his independence. He had chosen to live off campus rather than stay in the dormitories, enjoying the freedom that came with his rented apartment. His love for cold-blooded creatures was well known among his friends. He found their vibrant scales and exotic features endlessly fascinating. It was during a routine visit to a local pet store that he first laid eyes on a peculiar sea iguana, a rare amphibious creature. Chen Chu couldn't resist its unique charm and decided to bring it home. Sea iguanas were typically gentle, but this one was different. The moment it was freed from its cage, it lunged forward, biting Chen Chu's wrist. Startled, Chen Chu swung his phone instinctively, striking the iguana on the head. The creature released its grip, but the phone ricocheted off a wall and slammed into Chen Chu's temple. Darkness enveloped him. When he regained consciousness, his vision was blurry. The iguana sat nearby, watching him with unblinking eyes. As he tried to move his hand, he noticed something peculiar. The iguana mirrored his movements. Testing the phenomenon further, he realized he could control the iguana as if it were an extension of himself. It was then that a system interface materialized before him, floating like a hologram. The display revealed a wealth of information about himself and the iguana. Chen Chu's stats were listed: Level 0, Constitution 8.5, and Spirit 12. His talent, mind control, was highlighted, along with several skills: extremities boxing, stepping cloud jump, and springing leg. The iguana, labeled as his clone, showed 0 evolution levels, but 5 evolution points. Chen Chu marveled at the system's existence. Is this my Goldfinger? He wondered aloud, borrowing the term from gaming culture to describe a cheat system. Excitement bubbled within him as he considered the possibilities. Could he stream the intelligent iguana to gain fame, or use it to gather valuable resources like abalone and sea cucumbers for profit? However, the rumbling of the iguana's stomach, and his own, quickly grounded him in reality. Guess we're both hungry, he muttered. Deciding the iguana was omnivorous, he prepared a meal of chopped vegetables and steak. To his relief, the iguana devoured the meat eagerly. Moments later, a notification from the system indicated that the clone had gained 5 evolution points, and Chen Chu's constitution had increased by 0.5%. Staring at his hand, he felt stronger, albeit slightly. He gazed at the system interface and thought of his father. His father's words echoed in his mind, as sharp and unyielding as the first strike of a blade. Practicing forms without understanding their foundations is meaningless. Chen could still remember his father demonstrating the movements, his stance immovable as a mountain, his strikes swift as a storm. Force begins in the legs, his father had explained, planting his foot like he could crush the earth beneath him, travels through the abdomen, and takes shape in the fingers. A punch is nothing without the ground to anchor it. As a boy, Chen had begged for rest, legs trembling after hours standing atop wooden piles. Sweat dripped down his face, his chest heaving as he pleaded, "Just 5 minutes, father, please." But his father's glare was merciless. "Cowards rest when the battle isn't over," he growled, pointing at the piles. "Now get back up, or the only thing you'll master is failure." Defiance flared in Chen's chest, burning brighter than exhaustion. He screamed, "I'm not a coward," and forced his body to move, every muscle screaming in protest. His father barked for him to run faster, harder, like the hounds of hell nipped at his heels. Eventually, his strength gave out. A stone caught his foot, and he crashed to the ground with a gasp. Lying there, chest heaving and pride shattered, he waited for his father to help him up. But the only thing that came was his father's voice, cold as winter steel. "In this world, no one will help you up. You rise, or you don't. Choose now." Years later, his father handed him a box filled with their savings. "Take this and go," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Out there, you'll find the strength I couldn't give you. Train. Never stop. When you're strong enough, you'll see the other side of the world." Chen's heart clenched. "But how will I find you again?" His father's expression softened for only a moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "When you're a grandmaster, you'll understand. Until then." He turned and walked away, the door closing with a finality that echoed louder than any farewell. A decade had passed in what felt like the blink of an eye since Chen Chu's father had walked out of the house after those fateful words. "Once you become a grandmaster, I might no longer be around." The memory still lingered, as vivid as the day it happened. Chen often replayed the scene in his mind, wondering if his father truly meant those words, or if they were merely a lesson in resilience. The iguana's loud, contented burp snapped Chen back to the present. Surprised by how quickly it had devoured the meal, Chen tilted his head, noticing something peculiar. The iguana seemed longer, its body more robust. Turning to the system interface, his suspicions were confirmed. Evolution points. 15/200ths. Chen couldn't help but smirk at the progress. He caught sight of himself in a mirror nearby. Lifting his shirt, he examined his torso. The faint outline of abs, a sight he hadn't seen before, greeted him. Realizing that the iguana's evolution was also affecting his own body, Chen felt a surge of excitement. His mind raced with possibilities. Could this be the path to fulfilling his childhood dream? Could the iguana one day become a towering behemoth while he transformed into a true martial arts grandmaster? The thought alone sent a thrill through him. Later that day, Chen found himself at the bustling marketplace. The cashier cheerfully informed him, "That's 10 pounds of boneless prime beef and 20 pounds of lean pork, all packed and ready." "QR code," Chen replied, scanning his phone at the payment device. Once the transaction was complete, he loaded the groceries into his car, satisfied that this would suffice for the next round of meals. Back at home, he arranged the final dish on the table, presenting it to the iguana with a sense of accomplishment. Watching it devour the feast with gusto, Chen leaned back, amused by the unique connection they shared. Through the bond, he experienced the iguana's taste sensations. He learned that pork wasn't as appealing as beef and made a mental note to add more cumin to the seasoning next time. The iguana, now full, waddled over to the window and lay down to bask in the sunlight, its massive body casting a shadow across the room. Chen turned his focus to his training. In the martial arts room, Chen positioned himself in front of the punching bag. Drawing in a deep breath, he launched a punch with all his strength. The system interface responded immediately. Extremities boxing experience, +5. Chen grinned, impressed by the results. His progress was tangible, and every session made him feel stronger. Over the next 2 days, he trained relentlessly, each session more intense than the last. Wiping sweat from his brow after hours of practice, Chen reflected on his rapid growth. With a determined glint in his eyes, he drew his leg back and delivered a devastating kick to the punching bag, snapping its chain. The bag crashed to the floor with a thud. Checking the system, Chen saw his stats. Constitution, 28. Spirit, 16. External aura, 10. Chi perception, 10. The iguana's evolution points had risen as well, now sitting tantalizingly close to the next threshold, 195 200ths. Chen recognized this milestone. By traditional martial arts standards, he had reached the peak of the Ming realm. He recalled his father explaining the martial arts hierarchy: Ming realm, dark realm, and transformation realm. At the pinnacle of the Ming realm, one could take on 10 opponents with ease. The dark realm, reserved for first-rate experts, marked the strength to face 100 foes and was often associated with legendary families. The elusive transformation realm represented a level of mastery so profound that it was said to grant an unbreakable body and the ability to defeat 1,000 enemies, a feat described only in ancient texts. Chen smiled wistfully at the memory of asking his father about his own level. His father had admitted to briefly entering the dark realm, but before he could elaborate, young Chen had excitedly interrupted. "That's amazing. Are you from a legendary family?" he had blurted out. His father's response had been less than amused. "I'm from Luan," he had snapped, ending the conversation abruptly. That evening, Chen stepped out of the martial arts room, his body still buzzing with energy. His breath caught as he saw the iguana. It had grown significantly. Its scales gleamed under the faint light, and its powerful limbs hinted at untapped strength. "Just one more meal," Chen murmured with a smile, "and you'll evolve. Don't disappoint me." The iguana tilted its head, as if understanding his words. Chen prepared another feast, setting the dishes before the creature. As it ate, Chen tasted the food through their bond, savoring the shared experience. Watching the evolution points creep upward, 199, he could barely contain his anticipation. The air in the room seemed charged with energy. "Almost there," Chen whispered, his fists clenching in excitement. "The next step is ours." The iguana reached 200 evolution points, triggering a dramatic announcement from the system. Evolution requirements met, initiating evolution process. What followed was chaos. A surge of searing pain coursed through both Chen and the iguana, their shared connection amplifying the agony. Sharp spikes erupted from the iguana's back, its thrashing body tearing through furniture, walls, and the floor as it struggled with the transformation. Chen screamed alongside his clone, the pain so intense that he momentarily lost his grip on reality. When the storm subsided, Chen found himself sprawled on the floor, his body drenched in sweat and trembling. He turned his head toward the iguana, now a towering presence in the room. Its once sleek form was larger, more muscular, and covered in sharp, intimidating spines. The creature's eyes gleamed with intelligence and primal energy, and its tail, now thicker and stronger, whipped back and forth, testing its newfound power. Chen stumbled to his feet, marveling at the evolved iguana. To test its strength, he commanded it to strike the punching bag in the corner of the room. With a single swipe of its tail, the iguana demolished the bag, sending fragments flying across the space. Chen's curiosity turned inward. He opened his status window, and his jaw dropped at the results. Constitution, doubled. Spirit, doubled. External aura, doubled. Chi perception, doubled. The implications of this were exhilarating. Each time the clone evolved, Chen's physical attributes multiplied. Though uncertain if this exponential growth would continue, the potential was overwhelming. If this keeps up, Chen thought, I might not just reach the peak of martial arts, I could surpass it entirely. Testing his newfound power, Chen released his aura. A visible ripple of energy filled the room, the sheer pressure of it startling even himself. By traditional martial arts standards, he had just stepped into the dark realm, a level few ever attained. The ability to project external energy was a hallmark of true martial arts mastery, a skill that separated the experts from the legends. Turning his gaze to the iguana, he noticed something extraordinary. The creature had also released its own aura. The room crackled with energy as their auras intertwined, a shared power that seemed to acknowledge their unique bond. The iguana's gaze met his, as if to say, "We're in this together." Chen's reverie was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. The angry voice of his neighbor echoed from the hallway. "What the hell is going on in there? Is this a construction site?" Chen opened the door to find a massive man pounding on it, his face red with frustration. But as the man caught sight of Chen's imposing aura, his confidence wavered. The rage in his voice faltered, replaced by a nervous stammer. I mean, it's just been so loud lately. I thought maybe you were renovating. Chen bowed slightly, apologizing for the disturbance. I've been training. I didn't realize the noise was so disruptive. The man peeked into the apartment, his eyes widening at the destruction within. Broken furniture, shattered walls, and the demolished punching bag painted a scene of utter chaos. His earlier bravado evaporated. Just try to keep it down, he stammered, stepping back into the hallway. As the man entered the elevator, Chen couldn't help but smirk. The iguana waddled over to the door, poked its enormous head out, and stuck its tongue out mockingly. Chen turned back to the iguana, its size now a glaring issue. You've outgrown this place, he said, realizing that keeping the creature indoors was no longer feasible. It was time to release the iguana into the ocean, where it could thrive and continue its evolution. The next morning, Chen drove to the shoreline, the iguana secured in the back of his car. The sea breeze greeted him as he stepped out, and he could feel the anticipation of what was to come. Entering the iguana's body through their shared connection, Chen dove into the water, leaving his human form on the shore. Underwater, Chen activated his energy sense. His current range extended to a radius of 10 meters, allowing him to scan the murky depths with surprising clarity. It wasn't long before he spotted a peculiar sight, a massive, five-eyed fish swimming lazily near the seabed. Its grotesque appearance startled him, but curiosity quickly turned to resolve. You'll be my first target, he thought. Chen directed the iguana's body toward the fish, but the creature was surprisingly agile, dodging his initial lunge. Instead, Chen crashed into a large stone, the impact splitting it cleanly in half. The sheer force stunned him, and the fish. Seizing the moment, Chen launched another attack, this time sinking his teeth into the fish's flank. The taste was unexpectedly rich, and as he devoured the creature, a system notification appeared. Mutated fish consumed. Clone evolution points +10. Physique +1. Swimming deeper into the ocean, Chen began piecing together a theory. The post-evolution change had altered how the iguana absorbed energy. Ordinary food now yielded a mere 1 evolution point per meal. But the mutated fish were far more efficient, providing substantial gains. Chen couldn't ignore the implications. Strange creatures appearing in the ocean and reports of unexplained phenomena hinted at a world far from its former peace. Something extraordinary and dangerous was unfolding. If these mutated fish are just the beginning, Chen mused, what else might be lurking out there? With the iguana hunting and devouring a variety of these strange sea creatures, the system eventually chimed in. Daily evolution point cap reached, 100/100ths. Accepting the limitation, Chen decided it was time to explore further. Through the iguana's eyes, the underwater world was a vibrant mosaic, a stark contrast to the pitch-black abyss perceived by human senses. The iguana's amphibious nature allowed it to stay submerged for extended periods, but its reliance on lungs necessitated occasional trips to the surface. Spotting a large rock with a hollowed-out air pocket inside, Chen guided the creature there. The pocket offered a perfect sanctuary, a safe hidden spot to rest and replenish. Returning to his human body, Chen climbed back into his car. As he drove away from the shore, his attention was drawn to a house with a dimly lit porch and an unfamiliar car parked out front. Who lives all the way out here, he wondered. His thoughts were interrupted by a chilling scream for help from inside the house. Chen's grip on the steering wheel tightened, but he forced himself to keep driving. Not yet, he told himself. I'm not ready for this. I need to master my skills first. Inside the house, chaos was brewing. A bald man turned to one of his companions. Has the car outside left? Yeah, it's gone, the other replied confidently, earning a nod of approval. Meanwhile, a third man was struggling to restrain a woman tied to a chair. Her gag had slipped off, and her muffled cries filled the room. The bald man's expression darkened. He stomped over, kicking the third man in the ribs. Idiot! How could you let this happen? The man protested, clutching his side. It's not my fault. It was too dark when we brought her in. Ignoring the excuse, the bald man crouched near the woman. He clamped a rough hand over her mouth, leaning in close. Make another sound, he hissed, and you'll regret it. Resist, and we'll have some fun before this is over. Chen's conscience got the better of him. He turned the car around, parking at a distance to avoid detection. Closing his eyes, he activated his energy sense. The house's interior came alive in his mind. 3 men inside, 2 seated at a table drinking, another eating while scrolling through his phone. The tied-up woman's energy signature was faint but detectable. This isn't random, Chen concluded. It's either a kidnapping or trafficking ring. Carefully, Chen approached the house. With a burst of energy, he kicked the door open, sending it flying off its hinges. The men inside were caught off guard, their drinks spilling as they scrambled to react. Chen moved like a whirlwind. His first strike sent the third man crashing into the wall, clutching his stomach in agony. The bald man lunged at him with a knife, but Chen's elbow connected with his chest, the force dropping him to the ground with a guttural scream. The second man caught the bald man before he collapsed completely. The second man stood, eyeing Chen with a mix of amusement and irritation. "You're bold," he said, his voice calm yet laced with menace. "What's your name, and what style do you practice?" Chen straightened, his aura radiating authority. "Chen Chu, disciple of Luotuan 8 Extremities Boxing." The man smirked. "Ning Fu, Yu Wang Fist." He cracked his knuckles. "Let's see if you live up to your reputation." Ning Fu launched a swift strike, his fist cutting through the air like a blade. Chen intercepted it, locking his grip on Ning Fu's wrist and pulling him forward. He aimed a kick at Ning Fu's head, but Ning Fu caught his leg, countering with a punch that landed squarely on Chen's jaw. The impact sent Chen reeling backward, but he stomped hard on the ground, regaining his balance instantly. Ning Fu's eyes widened. "Not bad." Chen didn't respond. Instead, he surged forward with an Iron Mountain slam, driving his shoulder into Ning Fu's chest and sending him flying. The force of the technique cracked the floorboards where Ning Fu landed. Yu coughed, blood flecking his lips, yet his grin stretched wide, feral and unyielding. "Now this," he rasped, pushing himself to his feet, "is getting interesting." His body trembled, but his eyes burned with savage delight. Who would have thought I'd run into a true disciple of Luotuan 8 Extremities Boxing after coming down from the mountain? Chen wiped a trickle of sweat from his brow, his breathing steady despite the storm raging in his muscles. "The Iron Mountain Slam," he said coolly, "is indeed worthy of its reputation." "But," Yu's expression hardened. "But what?" Chen's voice was measured, his gaze sharp as steel. "It's disappointing. A practitioner of Yu Wang Fist, a style with such history, reduced to walking a crooked path. What a waste." Yu's grin faltered, his pride stung by the accusation. His laugh was bitter and sharp, like broken glass. "High and mighty, aren't you?" he sneered. "You've barely left the mountain. Out here in the real world, you either claw your way to the top or get trampled. No room for your self-righteous ideals." His words hung in the air like a challenge. With a guttural roar, Yu lunged, his fingers stiffened into deadly spears aimed directly at Chen's eyes. Time slowed as Chen moved. With a single fluid motion, he shifted his weight, sidestepping the attack. His leg whipped out, striking with the force of a battering ram. The impact was thunderous, sending Yu spinning through the air before he crashed face-first into the ground with a sickening thud. Yu lay still, the fight drained from his body. Chen stood over him, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his brow. His hand trembled as he clenched it into a fist, the adrenaline of the battle giving way to exhaustion. He stared at Yu's fallen form, his thoughts swirling. This isn't just training anymore. The real world doesn't hold back, and neither can I. He flexed his hand again, wincing at the tremor in his fingers. Control. Without it, I'm no protector. I'm just a danger to everyone I swore to defend. A soft, broken voice pulled him from his thoughts. Turning, Chen saw the hostage, a young woman, her face streaked with tears. She tried to call out, but her voice cracked with fear. Chen rushed to her side, quickly untying the ropes that bound her. The moment she was free, she flung herself at him, clinging tightly as sobs racked her body. "It's over," Chen whispered, his voice low and steady. "You're safe now." She pulled back, her tear-filled eyes locking onto his. "Thank you," she choked out. "Thank you so much." Chen handed her his phone. "Call the police," he instructed. "But once they arrive, I need you to promise me something." The woman hesitated, then nodded. What is it? Don't tell them about me. Say you don't know who saved you. Her brows knit in confusion, but she nodded again. I promise. Minutes later, the distant wail of sirens grew louder. Chen slipped out into the shadows, leaving the woman alone to face the authorities. The police stormed the house, weapons drawn and shields raised. Freeze! The lead officer barked, scanning the room. What they found left them speechless. 3 men lay incapacitated, their bodies crumpled like rag dolls, while the hostage sat trembling in the corner. Chief, you need to see this, one officer said, leading him to the front door. The massive wooden frame was shattered, the hinges ripped from their sockets. Clear footprints were imprinted on the splintered surface. Guanqing, an officer from the security agency, approached with a report. We've analyzed the damage to the door, she said crisply. Based on the depth of the prints and the displacement of the door, whoever did this applied a force of at least 1,000 kilograms. The door was sent flying 3 meters. The deputy chief flipped through the photos, his brows furrowed. What kind of person could do this? The deputy chief grimly reviewed the aftermath of the incident. 2 of the men had died instantly, their bodies battered beyond recognition. The third, while still breathing, had been reduced to a vegetative state, his mind shattered by a severe concussion. Guanqing handed him the report. Ling Rongya, the hostage, claims the rescuer wore a mask. She couldn't see his face. The deputy chief scowled. A mask, convenient. But this kind of force, this doesn't make sense. Even the king of boxing tops out at 800 kilograms in training. In a real fight? No one comes close to this. Guan nodded, her voice low. This goes beyond human capability. Especially with all the strange events cropping up lately. A sudden clap of thunder rolled through the station, rattling the windows. The deputy chief glanced at the storm brewing outside, muttering under his breath, "A storm's coming, all right. Bigger than we think." The next night, the sea roared beneath a cliff where Chen stood, his figure silhouetted against the moonlit waves. Below him, 3 men huddled near the rocky shore, their conversation carried on the salty breeze. "Boss," the first man grumbled, "we just made some cash, and you've already blown $1 million on a woman from Bald Tiger. Isn't that a little wasteful?" The second man chimed in. "Yeah, it took us ages to recover that sunken ship. We only cleared, what, 2 million? Their leader, a burly man with a scar cutting across his cheek, sneered. Short-sighted fools. Do you even know who she is? Once we've got her, money won't be an issue anymore." At this, the 2 men perked up, eyes gleaming with greed. "Are you serious, boss?" one asked eagerly. The scarred man turned to the bespectacled Four Eyes. "You've got everything ready, right?" Four Eyes nodded quickly. "Yes, boss. I set up a shipping company, rented a high-end office building, and even hired the prettiest faces for secretarial and front desk roles. All up to your standards." The boss grinned, his teeth gleaming like a predator's. "Good. Once we get rolling, the profits will flow like water." He paused, chest swelling with pride. "And don't forget, I can breathe underwater. As long as we know where the sunken ships are, we'll haul up treasures and live like kings." The men laughed, their voices carrying into the night. "We'll never go hungry with you leading us, boss." The sound of rustling bushes cut their revelry short. The boss spun around, his voice a bark of panic. "Who's there? Show yourself."